So, why did I leave spiritual work? And more importantly, why did I come back? Hey guys, it's John sitting here in my living room on a rainy day outside. Uh, but I thought I'd hop on and make these two videos because I'm still stacking up videos for my vacation. I wanted to hop on and make this one in particular because it is a question that I get asked occasionally. Why did you leave the work so long ago? People who knew I was out doing spiritual work in the early 2000s know that there was a very big period of time there where I was just not out there any longer. And I wanted to hop on and tell this story because it really is something I've mentioned in other videos, but I want to be very clear about why. And also be very clear about the fact that I didn't leave spiritual work. I just started doing spiritual work in a different way. And I'd like to tell this story because it talks about not only following your intuition, but it talks about stepping into a greater work and a different kind of work. So back in the early 2000s, I had my regression and I was speaking all over North America, having private sessions in, all over the East Coast, and went out to Texas and Portland, Oregon. And I was all over North America, up in London, Ontario. And what happened was I would come back year after year to the same locations. And every year I'd come back, I'd talk to the same people, and they always had the same problems. And I came to realize that they weren't listening to what I was teaching or putting into practice what I was teaching. They were just interested in coming and hanging out with a guy who had this interesting past life story. So I began to realize that in a lot of ways, my past life story was a detriment to my teaching, what I was talking about. That's why you'll notice of all the 1,400 some odd videos on my channel, very few of them talk about my past life. And there's a reason for this, because the greatest lesson I learned from my past life is that it doesn't matter who anybody was or in a past life. It only matters what you are now and who you are now and what you're doing now. And that everybody has the power to step into their divinity and create something beautiful in their lives and in the world, as long as they're willing to take control of their own experience and responsibility for their own outcomes. What happened to me was, after I kept coming back to these same locations, I would see these same people. I began to get frustrated. I began to get frustrated because no one was hearing what I was saying. No one was putting into practice what I was teaching. When I do a private session for somebody, I sit down and I write a channeled message beforehand. It's just automatic writing, but the information that comes through is for them specifically. Every so often, I'll do the same for me. And I sat down to do it for myself at this time, and it didn't really go well. It didn't seem to work well. So I laid down to go to bed, and I had a dream. And the dream really gave me the information that I was looking for in that automatic writing. I was in a boat on a river, and we're flowing along, moving along. And suddenly that river empties into a pond. And then the water becomes stagnant. And you could see vapors coming off of it, and the mosquitoes and laying their eggs. And it becomes a sort of a stagnant pool. And I'm in this boat on this stagnant pool. In other words, it's not moving. Things aren't living because of the fact that it wasn't working. In that dream, I hear someone yelling, "Hey, hey!" And I turn around, and over on the shore of the pond is a lighthouse. In front of that lighthouse is a person screaming, "Hey, hey, hey!" So I stuck my hands in the water, and I paddled my raft over to where they were. And I stepped out of the raft, and he walked up to me, and I said, "What can I do for you? How can I help you?" He says, "Can you help me find the path?" And I said, "Sure, it's right this way." And I just took them down this path. And as I took them down this path, I was walking along, talking with them, and suddenly I see another group of people ahead of me walking down the path in the same direction. And I turned to them and I say, "Just follow them." He says, well, where are you going? I said, I'm going back to get somebody else. And I go back to get somebody else. And I realized in that dream, what that dream was telling me was that I needed to stop preaching to the choir, and I needed to start putting people on a path, getting people out of their physical world mind and onto a spiritual path, onto a different direction. And so my job really was to empower people to step up into their own divinity, but do it in such a way that they didn't realize that I was talking spirituality. So I went into the corporate world. Now, why did I go in the corporate world? Because in the corporate world, it is the most cutthroat, deadly, and they don't allow spirituality does not really become into play in the workplace. But if I can go in there and I can talk spiritual concepts through modern or different vocabulary, I can put people on a path. So, in other words, manifestation is goal setting and achievement, right? So I start creating about thoughts, words, and deeds. I created a program called the 5Fs, which was fearlessly focus with faith, follow through with flexibility. The purpose of this program is to first to fearlessly let them break free of their anxieties, exhale, and I that's why I can often talk about the idea of the scientific reason why we store air in our lungs because of that work. Fearlessly focus, putting your intention and direction into a solid focus so you can create that action. Fearlessly focus with faith. Believe in what you're doing. Create what you're doing. Fearlessly focus with faith. Follow through. Take an action in faith towards that outcome. Fearlessly focus with faith. Follow through. Flexibility. When something comes up that seems contrary, stay flexible and stay on your focus with faith. And what happens is you can create whatever you want. So that's what this design was to teach spiritual principles with a corporate vocabulary. And so I did that for many, many, many years. And it was very good. I felt like I was doing good work. By the end of it, I really was getting tired of not being open about who I was and being clear about who I was. But I felt like I was putting people on paths. And people would email me and tell me, I understand what you're saying. And they would tell me spiritual stuff, but they would say it outside of the corporate environment, or they'd sneak up and they'd whisper to me because they couldn't say it in the corporate environment. While I was doing corporate work, I ended up meeting Tamara Zoner, who is a happiness coach, and we became friends. And I decided to do a podcast for the corporate audience. It was called the Corporate Action Hero Podcast. And what I would do is I would welcome in and interview people in the corporate environment who were doing big works, and I called them the corporate action heroes. Tamara was one of these interviews I did. Well, as we did this interview, I realized that we just got along. We were good. We became friends very quickly. And we started talking spirituality when we weren't recording. I said to her, we ought to do a podcast together about spirituality. She said, okay. So we created the Spirit Cafe podcast. And if you go on YouTube right now and type in Spirit Cafe podcast, you'll find over 100 episodes of Tamara and I doing interviews, including Neil Donald Walsh and a lot of other people, a lot of amazing people, actually. So if you want more content where we're talking spirituality, that'd be a great way to find it. So at one point, I invited Kim Carey from Intuitive View on as an interview. And we brought her on the channel, and we just literally just asked her story, how she came to where she was. We started talking, and somehow in the conversation with Kim, she says something about reincarnation. And I said, well, I have a pretty big reincarnation story, but yeah, it's no big deal. I kind of blew it off because I didn't want to bring that out. We finished the interview and sat around. Tamara and Kim and I were still online talking, but not recording. And she says, tell me about this past life story. And something just intuitive view, right? Intuitively kind of told me to tell Kim my entire story. And I laid it out to her flat out. Very interestingly enough, about a week later, I get an email from Kim. She's saying, John, I'd like to bring you on my channel and talk to you about reincarnation. She says, you don't have to share your story. I just wanted to talk to you about that topic, about reincarnation. I said, sure, no problem. So I got off that email and I started looking at it and I'm going, well, is this time for me to start letting go of these things? Now, this was during COVID, right? So I wasn't doing corporate work at the time because COVID had hit. So I sat down and I asked, is it time for me to bring my story back out? And I got a resounding yes, a resounding yes. So I sat down and I said, well, if I'm going to do an interview on her channel and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do what I talk about. I'm going to take an action. I'm going to fearlessly put myself back out there. I'm going to focus on the outcome of this achievement. I'm going to fearlessly focus with faith. I'm going to believe it's going to happen, follow through. I'm going to take actions, and I'm going to remain flexible as the time goes on. So I decided to say yes. Okay. So the day before that intuitive view interview was about to go live, I went in and rebought the domain name John of New, which I had owned for years and let it lapse because I was no longer, when I was in the corporate world, I was no longer doing that. So I didn't even own it anymore. It was just out there in the ethers. I bought it the day before and I ended up resetting up the website. And what I did is the day before, this is exactly the actions I took the day before. I bought the domain name back. I set up my John of New email. I built a website in Weebly very quickly. I went on YouTube, set up a YouTube channel really quickly, shot 3 videos and put them on the channel so that when the interview went live and people came to my channel, they would see something. So there were 3 videos on the channel when you came. And the day before that interview went live was when all that happened. The day of the interview, prior to it going live, I had 4 subscribers. I had me, my good friend Holly, my sister Patty, and Tamara, my co-host on the Spirit Cafe. Well, the interview goes live, and the next day I had 300 subscribers. And it was amazing. That day, something miraculous happened to kind of prove that I was in the right place. I got an email in response to an email I had written 10 or 11 years earlier. So 11 years earlier, I owned the domain name John at John of New, and then I let it lapse, rebought it that day. This woman went to a reader in Hawaii, and the reader said, you need to find John. He remembers being John the Beloved. He's a big bearded guy with a bald head, and he has a message for you. So she went and she said, I know who that is, but I haven't seen him in years. He's gone. We can't find him. So she dug back in her old emails from years ago, 10 years ago, right? And she found this email chain between me and her, and she hit reply. And it came to me, even though I didn't own that domain for many, many years. Really amazing. And I did have something to talk to her about, something very personal, very I did an amazing little session with her. It was an incredible session. But the idea that email from a reply from all those years earlier when I didn't even own the domain anymore, um, that kind of proved to me that I was right on track. It was kind of like, if this is kind of my sign that I'm in alignment with my own purpose, my personal chosen purpose, because all purpose is chosen, it's not found. Um, And when you look at it from the perspective of why did I come back? I came back because I wasn't being authentic. I didn't feel authentic in the corporate world. I didn't feel like I was creating from a space of love or from the space of my authentic being. I really felt like I was hiding or wearing a mask over who I was. And hiding and wearing that mask really didn't feel good to me. And I'm a big proponent of if it doesn't feel good, it's not for you. And so I wanted to make that change. And making that change, I was instantly rewarded with yes, this is perfect. This is exactly what you should be doing. So that's why I came back to the work. That's the reason why I came back to the work. and the reason why I left it in the first place. But let me just say this. When I came back and I started doing the work, I was blown away with the change in humanity. People were no longer interested as much in about talking to me about my past life as much. They were more interested in how do they step into their divinity? How do they become more empowered? How do they create a humanity has changed dramatically over the past 10 years. And it's changed in such a way that I really have great hope and great um, anticipation for the beautiful world that's being created right now because people are stepping into their divinity. And all the people who are opposed to people being powerful or them not being right in their way of thinking, they're all falling to the wayside, and they're starting to call people names and they're starting to do all these things. Well, as Socrates said, when the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the loser. And so, in reality, their vitriol is just a sign that they're losing and the world is changing for a more beautiful and positive place. And so I wanted to hop on and just make this video and talk about why I left, why I came back, and also share that the world is really coming into a beautiful place right now. And the more of us who choose to create that way, the world will be that way. And those who are lost in fears and anxieties will start to see the off ramps that we're offering them, and they'll start to become more loving. They'll start to be more caring. You're starting to see it now. People who are lost in the cult of personality are now starting to say, "Now, what was I thinking?" And they're starting to see something different. And so I wanted to say to you, um, the reason I came back was because I saw such a change in you, such a change in humanity. And I realized that my place now is no longer just putting people on a path, but now being a part of their path and helping them step into their divinity, much like Jeshua used to do. And that's my thought on this. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. See you. Bye.